The Galactic Confederation had watched over the Milky Way for millennia, monitoring countless civilizations as they rose, flourished, and sometimes fell into oblivion. Their vast network of observation stations listened for signs of intelligent life, distress beacons, transmissions, or anything that indicated a species had reached beyond its own world. Yet in all those millennia, never had they encountered a signal quite like the one that suddenly erupted from the outer edge of the Orion. It originated from a planet known as Earth, a world the Confederation had categorized as primitive, teetering on the edge of self-destruction. Their history was riddled with war, environmental collapse, and internal strife, yet they had somehow survived, barely. Their technology was not advanced enough for faster-than-light travel, nor had they established colonies beyond their own solar system. By all calculations, they were not yet ready to join the greater galactic community. But then, against all odds, they sent out a distress signal, one unlike any that had ever been received. The message did not contain simple cries for help. It carried something far more complex. Streams of data poured through subspace channels at frequencies the Confederation had not expected them to be capable of using. Encoded within the transmission were technological blueprints, medical research, energy solutions, information that spoke not of desperation, but of determination. Alongside the technical data came recordings of human voices, their words raw with emotion. Pleas for aid were intertwined with declarations of resilience, with messages of unity, and with the unshakable belief that their species was worth saving. The Confederation's High Council convened immediately. "Unprecedented," murmured Grand Archivist Zeltar, his crystalline form pulsing with shifting colors. He analyzed the data streaming across the great hall's central display, his multifaceted eyes absorbing every detail. This species, this humanity, should not have been capable of such complexity. Yet here they are, reaching into the void, not as beggars, but as problem solvers. Another council member, a towering being with translucent skin that rippled with bioluminescence, studied the data with skepticism. They are on the verge of collapse. Their planet's climate is destabilizing, their resources are dwindling, and their conflicts have not ceased. They have brought this doom upon themselves. And yet, Exeltar countered, they do not surrender, they do not beg for relocation, they offer solutions even in their dying moments. That is remarkable. Silence fell over the council chamber. Finally, Supreme Arbiter Velcor, the eldest among them, spoke. His voice was heavy with the weight of countless civilizations studied, countless verdicts passed. "We have ignored Earth for centuries, deeming them unworthy of intervention. Now, at the brink of their extinction, they have defied our expectations. We must see them for ourselves." The decision was made. A fleet was dispatched. Far across the void, unnoticed by the humans below, the Confederation's ships emerged from hyperspace, slipping into orbit around the fragile blue world. Their sensors scanned the surface, absorbing every detail: burning cities, swelling oceans, battlefields where nations clashed for the last of their resources. And yet, through it all, there was something unexpected: hope. On the ground, in the heart of Earth's final bastion of coordinated effort, Captain Ileana Voss stood in the control center of the United Earth Space Command. The holographic display before her showed real-time planetary conditions, failing ecosystems, dwindling reserves. Yet alongside them, a symbol flashed, the outbound signal, their last desperate gamble. "Do you think they'll answer?" asked Lieutenant Ramesh Patel, his voice quieter than usual, betraying the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them all. Ileana exhaled. "If there's anything out there that can, they have to." The human race had exhausted all other options. Climate stabilization efforts had failed to halt the rapid deterioration of Earth's biosphere. Wars had erupted over the last habitable zones. Billions had perished in the past decades. And yet, instead of breaking apart completely, humanity had done something extraordinary. They had come together. Governments, corporations, private citizens, divided for centuries, had united in a final act of defiance against oblivion. Knowledge was shared freely, resources pooled, and for the first time in human history, survival outweighed profit, politics, and pride. The distress signal they had sent was not an act of desperation, but a declaration. We are still here. We will not fade quietly. The room fell silent as new readings flooded their screens. "Captain," a technician stammered. "We've got incoming contacts, multiple. They just appeared." A dozen unknown vessels had entered Earth's orbit. Unlike the crude machines of war that humanity had built, these ships radiated elegance, shifting in form, as if alive. They bore no weapons, no markings, but their very presence was overwhelming. Every screen in the control center flickered as a new transmission forced itself onto every channel. Across the world, billions watched as the message came through in perfect synchronization, translated into every language known to humankind. "We are the Galactic Confederation. We have received your distress signal. We have come to witness your species in its time of need." The words rang out, sending waves of emotion across the planet. Relief, fear, wonder. The skies, once filled only with storm clouds and smoke, now bore silent watchers from the stars. A delegation was sent down. The ship descended with an eerie grace, touching down on the scorched remains of what had once been Geneva. It was the designated meeting ground, neutral territory. As the ramp lowered, figures emerged, each one a testament to the diversity of the Confederation. Towering crystalline beings. Multi-limbed scholars with eyes that saw beyond the visible spectrum. Energy-based entities that shimmered like living plasma. They moved with deliberate intent, their presence both otherworldly and impossibly real. And waiting for them stood the leaders of Earth. President Aisha Okafor, chosen to represent the United Earth Federation, stepped forward, her face composed but her eyes betraying the weight of history resting on her shoulders. "Thank you for answering our call," she said, her voice unwavering. "We do not ask for charity, we ask for the chance to prove our worth." The delegation observed her carefully. Zelta stepped forward, his crystalline structure shifting as he studied the human leader. "Your world is dying, your species teeters on the edge of extinction, and yet, instead of pleading for salvation, you send knowledge. You offer solutions even in your final moments. Why?" President Okafor met his gaze. "Because we are more than our failures. We are more than the mistakes that brought us here. Humanity has always fought against impossible odds. We do not surrender. We do not bow to fate. We endure. And if we must perish, we will do so as a species that never stop trying." The alien delegation exchanged silent glances, their minds processing the weight of those words. Supreme Arbiter Velcor, who had judged countless civilizations before, studied the humans before him. "You claim to be more than your history suggests. If this is true, then show us. Show us why humanity is worth saving." The fate of Earth, the fate of humanity itself, now rested not in their suffering, but in their strength. And for the first time in history, humanity was not alone. The arrival of the Galactic Confederation sent ripples across every corner of Earth. For centuries, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe, and now, at the brink of their own extinction, they had their answer. They were not alone, and the galaxy had finally taken notice of them. The Confederation's ships hung in the sky like silent sentinels, their surfaces shifting with an eerie, almost organic fluidity, reflecting the lights of the dying cities below. At first there was chaos. Panic surged through the population. The sudden appearance of extraterrestrial vessels sent conspiracy theorists into a frenzy, religious leaders into hurried debates, and governments into immediate, desperate council meetings. But it wasn't an invasion. No weapons had been fired, no demands had been made. The Confederation had come not as conquerors, nor as saviors, but as observers. Their presence alone was both a promise and a warning. The first encounter had been formal but brief. President Aisha Okafor had made Earth's case. standing firm as she addressed beings whose existence defied human understanding. They had listened, impassive, unreadable. And then they had spoken words that now echoed in every human mind. "Show us why humanity is worth saving." What did that mean? Across the world, a question ignited both hope and fear. Some believed it was an invitation, a chance to prove humanity's resilience. Others saw it as a test, one that, if failed, would mean abandonment, or worse. There was no precedent for this, no guidebook on how to convince an ancient interstellar civilization that a war-torn, dying planet was still worth fighting for. But there was no time to hesitate. The Confederation had made its demand, and now Earth had to respond. In the underground command center of the United Earth Space Command, Captain Ileana Voss stood at the heart of the world's last coordinated effort. Every major nation had sent their best minds, their brightest engineers, their most trusted leaders, all working together for one singular purpose: to prove that humanity was not beyond redemption. "We need to show them everything we have," Ileana said, pacing before the massive digital display. The room was filled with representatives from every surviving power, their faces illuminated by the glow of the screens. "They didn't come here to fix our problems for us. They came to see if we're capable of fixing them ourselves." A murmur of agreement passed through the gathered officials. Some were military leaders, their uniforms adorned with patches from nations that no longer existed. Others were scientists, their hands stained with the ink of hastily written theories, their faces lined with exhaustion. "They've seen our wars," said General Nakamura, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. "They've seen our destruction. We need to show them something else, something greater." "They're evaluating us," added Dr. Alina Petrov, a leading scientist in Earth's last functional space agency. "We need to demonstrate our adaptability, our ingenuity. They already know what we lack. We need to show them what we still have." But what did humanity still have? What could they offer that the Confederation, with its millennia of knowledge, had not already seen before? "We give them everything," Ileana said finally, turning to the room. "We show them every breakthrough, every innovation we've created, no matter how small. Medical advancements, alternative energy sources, spaceflight capabilities, and we do it fast." The plan was set into motion. Across the planet, humanity's greatest minds were mobilized. Laboratories that had been abandoned due to war and climate collapse were reopened. Data centers, some barely functional, were repurposed to compile and transmit everything Earth had to offer. What had begun as a distress signal now became something much more, a showcase of human resilience. But it wasn't enough to just send information. The Confederation wanted proof. So humanity gave it to them. In the shattered remains of New York City, engineers restored an experimental fusion reactor that had once been shut down due to funding cuts and political disputes. Within days, it roared back to life, providing stable, limitless energy to an entire district that had been left in darkness for years. Confederation drones hovered silently, recording every step of the process. In the flooded ruins of Bangkok, scientists demonstrated a new method of desalinating seawater using nanotechnology, a project that had once been shelved due to corporate greed and resource hoarding. Within a week, clean drinking water flowed into the streets again. The aliens observed, watching how humans adapted to the destruction they themselves had caused. In what was left of Geneva, the last of the world's medical pioneers gathered to share knowledge that had once been locked behind patents and bureaucratic red tape. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were analyzed, cures refined, vaccines distributed freely for the first time in history. For the first time, progress was not hindered by politics. It was not divided by nations. It was not owned. And all the while, the Confederation watched. Their ships remained in the sky, their delegates silent, their judgment unknown. They had not interfered, they had not given advice, nor had they intervened. They merely observed. Days turned to weeks. There were still those who doubted. Some saw the Confederation as indifferent spectators, others as executioners waiting to pass a sentence. Some factions, hidden in the ruins of fallen governments, whispered of resistance, of striking first before alien overlords could impose their rule. But no strike came. No war began. Instead, something else happened. Humanity began to change. For the first time in centuries, progress was not measured in profit, in military dominance, or in political gain. It was measured in survival, in collaboration, in the desperate, beautiful struggle to keep going. Old enemies stood side by side in research labs. Scientists who had once been separated by borders now shared discoveries as if their lives depended on it, because they did. And through it all, the aliens remained, watching. Then, on the 42nd day after the Confederation's arrival, a transmission was received. The aliens were requesting a final meeting. In the shadow of the ruined United Nations building, the delegation assembled once more. The leaders of Earth stood before the alien representatives, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also with something else. Hope. Zeltar, the crystalline Grand Archivist, stepped forward. His form shifted, refracting the dim light of the setting sun. "We have watched. We have seen what you are." The words hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. Supreme Arbiter Velcor, who had remained silent for most of the observation period, finally spoke. His voice was ancient, a deep resonance that carried the weight of entire civilization. "You are flawed," he said simply. "Your history is riddled with violence. You have squandered resources, turned against one another, and brought your world to the edge of ruin. There is no denying this." A silence fell over the gathered humans. No one spoke, no one argued, because it was true. "But," Velcor continued, "you are also something else. In the face of extinction, you do not kneel. You do not wait for salvation. You create it. In your darkest hour, you do not turn inward. You reach outward. And that," he paused, as if measuring his next words carefully, "that is." The alien delegation exchanged glances, an unspoken decision passing between them. "We have seen enough," Zeltar said. "The Confederation will not abandon you." The words sent a shudder through the assembled humans. Relief, disbelief, and raw emotion flooded the faces of those who had fought so hard to prove themselves. "What does this mean?" President Okafor asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Velcor's eyes shimmered. "It means that Earth will not stand alone." The declaration rang out across the world. Humanity had been seen. Humanity had been judged. And, against all odds, humanity had been chosen. The world held its breath as the words settled into the minds of every human alive. Earth will not stand alone. For so long, humanity had lived with the knowledge that if their world fell, there would be no one to catch them. They had built their civilizations under the assumption that they were alone in an indifferent universe, that their survival was theirs to fight for, theirs to lose. Now, in the dying embers of their greatest failures, they had been seen, they had been judged, and against every odd, the galaxy had chosen to stand with them. But what did that truly mean? As the last of the words from Supreme Arbiter Velcor echoed across the ruined meeting grounds, a heavy silence followed. It was President Okafor who finally spoke, her voice firm but cautious. "What does this entail? What will the Confederation do?" Velcor's gaze passed over the assembled human leaders, his ancient expression unreadable. "Assistance, knowledge, the tools you need to survive, but nothing more." The words carried weight, and for a moment the glow of hope in the gathered crowd dimmed. They had expected, what? Immediate salvation, ships to carry them off this dying world, a miracle? But miracles had never been humanity's way. President Okafor nodded. "That is more than we had yesterday, more than we had last month, last year." She took a step forward. "We will not squander this opportunity." The delegation of aliens stood unmoving, their otherworldly forms still as the grave, their glowing eyes, or whatever served as their eyes, watching. It was Zeltar, the Grand Archivist, who spoke next. "There is something you must understand," he said, his voice like the chime of crystalline wind. "The Confederation does not intervene lightly. We have watched civilizations rise and fall for millennia. We have seen species destroy themselves despite the gifts they were given. We will not fight your battles for you, nor will we undo the consequences of your past. What we offer is knowledge and the opportunity to wield it. Whether or not you succeed will depend on you alone." The message was clear. The Confederation was not here to save humanity. They were here to give them a chance to save themselves. Across Earth, the news spread faster than any broadcast in history. The Confederation had acknowledged humanity as worthy of assistance, but they would not rebuild what had been lost. They would not reverse the climate collapse, repair the damage of wars, or heal the wounds that humanity had inflicted upon itself. They would only give what knowledge was necessary to fix it on their own. And so the real work began. In the weeks that followed, humanity was introduced to an entirely new understanding of science, medicine, and engineering. It was not given freely. Every lesson was earned. The Confederation required proof of understanding before each new piece of knowledge was granted. It was a trial by fire, and humanity had no choice but to rise to meet it. A coalition of Earth's greatest scientists, engineers, and thinkers gathered in the ruins of the old International Space Station, which had been restored and expanded with the assistance of the Confederation's technology. It became the bridge between humanity and the greater galaxy, a symbol of their effort to move beyond the boundaries of their failing world. The station, renamed Horizon, became the new seat of human progress. The first gift from the Confederation was an introduction to energy technologies beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. Earth had already developed theories on fusion power, on quantum stabilization, on antimatter containment, but now they were given the missing pieces, the understanding that had eluded them. Within months, fusion reactors were constructed in key locations across the globe, bringing clean and limitless energy where only scarcity had existed before. The second lesson was in medicine. The Confederation provided access to biological advancements that allowed for the rapid treatment of diseases that had plagued Earth for centuries. Old pandemics were eradicated in weeks. Genetic therapies were introduced, though strictly regulated, allowing for the repair of cellular degradation caused by radiation, pollution, and malnutrition. For the first time in generations, hospitals were not places of death, but of healing. The third lesson was in space travel. Humanity had always looked to the stars, but they had been trapped within their own system, limited by their technology, by their own infighting. The Confederation provided schematics for a propulsion system that allowed for sublight speeds previously thought impossible, a technology that would allow humanity to expand beyond their homeworld. Not immediately, but soon. The stars were no longer a distant dream. But the Confederation was not the only force in the galaxy. As humanity rebuilt, as their cities flickered back to life with new energy, as their people began to recover from the wounds of war and disaster, the presence of the Confederation on Earth drew attention. Other civilizations took notice. Not all of them were benevolent. The first warning came in the form of a message intercepted by the Confederation's fleet stationed in orbit. It was not in any language humanity understood, but the meaning was unmistakable. The Confederation translated it for Earth's leaders. "You interfere where you should not. The species you have chosen is unworthy. If they will not die on their own, we will finish the task for you." The Confederation remained calm in the face of the threat. Supreme Arbiter Velcor addressed humanity once more, his voice steady but firm. "There are those in this galaxy who believe only in power, who see weakness as a crime punishable by annihilation. Your world, as it stands, is weak. They see this as an opportunity." A grim silence fell over the gathered leaders. "We cannot fight an interstellar war," said General Nakamura. "We don't even have ships." Velcor nodded. "And so, you have a choice. You may remain under our protection indefinitely, but that will mean becoming a vassal of the Confederation, subject to our laws, our oversight. You will no longer be free." The implication was clear. The Confederation had never offered salvation without cost. If humanity chose to accept their full protection, they would no longer be independent. They would be absorbed into the greater galactic order, their fate no longer their own. President Okafor spoke first. "And if we refuse?" Velcor's eyes darkened. "Then you must prepare, quickly." For the first time since the Confederation had arrived, humanity was truly divided. Some believed that joining the Confederation as a protected species was the only logical choice. Others believed that accepting such a fate would be another form of extinction, the death of their sovereignty, the end of their right to determine their own destiny. It was a question that had no easy answer. And then something unexpected happened. Earth did not crumble under the weight of this decision. They fought for it. Debates broke out, but they did not turn to violence. Leaders argued, but they did not turn to war. The decision was not made by a single ruler or government, but through the combined will of the people, and for the first time, a true global consensus was reached. Humanity would not bow. They would stand. The Confederation, for all its power and knowledge, did not interfere. They had given humanity the choice, and now they watched as Earth prepared to defend itself for the first time in its history, not against itself, but against an enemy from beyond the stars. It was a battle they were not ready for, but they had never been ready for any of the battles that had come before, and yet they had survived. Now, as the sky darkened with the shadows of approaching warships, as humanity stood on the precipice of its greatest challenge yet, one undeniable truth became clear to those who watched from above. The SOS signal had been a plea for help, but what it had truly revealed was something no alien species had expected. Humanity's true strength was not in its technology, nor in its knowledge. It was in its refusal to surrender. And in the heart of the approaching storm, the galaxy would soon learn that lesson for itself.